4 minutes. 4 minutes it is. Hello, welcome. They're adding the airco to make it cooler. Yeah, it's 26 degrees, so it's like almost like a hot tub here. Yeah. So I went.
Oh, you're giving away t-shirts?
Of course, it's an interactive session, and you can win stickers and T-shirts, and before there were 4 people, so then I could just hand them out, and it was finished. But no. So yeah, you're going to get a slightly interactive session where you can just shout out and raise hands and that kind of stuff. Hello, welcome. I'm starting in 2 minutes. 3. What is this? 2. Let's see if people are coming from the hallway. If not, then. A bit. There's still some movement, so good. All right, so I'll start now. Welcome to the session. It's about contribute beyond Drupal. It's 5 minutes past 3, and it's an interactive session, so if you don't participate, we will leave really quickly. But in the end, we won't go over 15:45. I'm Floris van Geel. I'm a Drupal entrepreneur since 2008. Been participating in international conferences, not just Drupal, but also other open source conferences. Presenting there since 2014, co-organizing European conference in 2018 with the highlight that there was no DrupalCon, so we got Drupal Europe. With 8 people, we spent half a year of our life in order to make that work, and then 50 people on site made it happen. So I'm very fanatic about cross open source collaboration and contributions. I helped bootstrap the Multi community in 2019 and been playing around a lot with development operations and consultancy. But since May 2022, I switched and I got a job. And currently I work for RocketChat. Who here knows what RocketChat is? There's like 3 people in the room that know it. And it's actually what you know from Teams or Slack, but then way better and faster. So that, and can do a lot more, but that's not the session about. So we're talking today about open source, obviously. We talk about GitHub. I was planning to take GitLab, but it was too much work, so I take GitHub. Drupal, open source culture, USPO. Who knows what USPO means here? Nobody? Great, then you're in the right room. I have something to tell you. Something about issue triage and how that works between enterprise and community open source. Then the next level that's ahead of us with IoT and IoE, Internet of Things, Internet of Everything. And on top of that, something extra to layer up the cake. Right, open source. Oh, that's one too fast. This was the interactive part, so you already got a spoiler there. Who knows here what open source is? Please shout out. Or what is it about? You know, yeah, you know. But you don't shout what it intends, no? Then I'll tell you. All right. So it's free for redistribution, so everybody can take it. The source code is free, so everybody can look at it. The derivatives works dependent on the license. I'm not going to explain them all. You have to, some license you have to give back even if you make a derivative work, and with others you can just do it. In general, there's no discrimination against persons, group, fields of endeavor. The distribution, the license always has to be included with the code, so you cannot take the license out of there and sell it. You can sell it, but you need to include the license. And the license must be specific to the product, and the license must not restrict other software, and it must be technological neutral, agnostic, meaning that it can be ported to other platforms where it will do exactly the same if it doesn't break. And if it does, you can fix it yourself. That's the great thing about open source. So, what is open source mainly being used for? In general, what you see that almost everything that you browse on the interwebs is hosted by open source. So that's the majority of everything. Then a lot of people use framework for application development, for example, Drupal. That's an application framework development thing. And yeah, you can integrate it with APIs, and we also have that in Drupal, and you can connect that to others. Great. And then you see that there's application modernization, new front ends, better user interaction, better technology, and so forth, which is usually built upon the same kind of technology, but then it's modernized. And it's used for digital transformation and automation with development operations, DevOps. This is from the Red Hat research, 2019, the state of open enterprise source. So we look at GitHub, and this is an interactive part where you need to shout out, else you don't get a t-shirt. So we play the game, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So if you look at GitHub, then we have a good, we have a bad, we have an ugly. Who shouts a good one? What? What's good about GitHub? Collaborating, yes. Yes, and also, yeah. And what more?
Documentations, like the, how do you call it, Git pages?
Git pages, yeah. It's very open, yeah. So I found the good part about the GitHub is it is a standard place for almost all open source projects and libraries. It's massive, it's huge. And it's free if you host open projects. So if you host your proprietary projects, you have to pay. So I think there's one t-shirt over there already. That's great. I also have stickers and these kind of stickers. And you can take them after the presentation. Okay, now we go for the bad about GitHub. Who knows what is bad about GitHub?
You should pay for private projects.
You should pay for your proprietary project. It's not really bad. It's good, then they get some monies there. Huh? No? It's not open. That's a good one. I should have added that. You also get a t-shirt. I said it's not sure if it stays within this license model. So now I have some projects in GitHub, and it could be that it transitions and I have to pay for my free projects. It's not so good as GitLab with regard to project management, issue queues, and those kind of things. Okay, now we go to the ugly part. That's a really easy one. It's really simple. No? What do you say? Yeah, but you already got a t-shirt, so that's great. It's owned by Microsoft. So, and another thing that we've seen last year, and also at the end of last year, is that you have a single point of failure. So if GitHub is down, nobody can update their projects anymore. And that was a thing with the CDNs, but still you have one single source of truth for the vast majority of open source projects. Okay, now let's do the same trick on Drupal. I already spent 2 t-shirts. I've got 2 left. Perfect. Okay, the good thing about Drupal. Yes, it is, it is. What else, what else? Because now we need more, because yeah, like, yeah, you contributed, like, you have them almost all, yeah. Fully open source, GPL3, it has the best community in the world, and it's like a Swiss Army toolkit, so you can build whatever you want with it, and you cannot buy Drupal because of the GPL license version 3 something. If you want to buy Drupal, every developer that ever written a single line of code has to sign off for that line of code, meaning that it's impossible to buy it. So it will remain open and free forever. That's one. I have 3 t-shirts left. Yeah, 2. Okay. Whatever. The bad. Oh.
Complex. It's a steep learning curve and it's bureaucratic.
Yeah, you also got 2 shirts. And the ugly part. What's the ugly part? I'll do it. The maintenance work is quite tough, and I'm really glad to hear in the Dries note that currently we're working hard to get automated updates in there, with obviously another loss of hair, because it never goes right when you have your custom code or deeply contrib stuff, which might not be so well maintained. And another downside of, ugly side of Drupal is that it has a relative high cost for your customers, which is good for your pocket, but not so good for theirs. Anyway, let's continue. So open source culture. And that's just beyond open source itself. It's applied to define a culture in which the fixations are made generally available. Participants in such a culture are able to modify these products and redistribute them back into the community. Meaning that it's not just code, it can also be mainly processes, but also finances. It can be open hardware, it can be open interactions, open APIs. Very important thing is that these APIs talk the same language and they can actually exchange data, and so forth. So the whole concept of open source culture is that from the core level of a company or an entity, everything is open and everything is shared. I wanted to quote Chris Buitaert. Who here knows Chris Buitaert? He's one of the famous DevOps engineers, and he's a nephew or related to our Dries Buitaert. And one of his famous quotes next to this one is, "Everything is a friggin' DNS problem." So when you don't reach the website, it might be that you don't have the actual relay and don't have it. So in this way, bring it back to the context of a continuous learning cycle for companies and entities. It doesn't really matter where an organization currently is, as long as they realize they're on a journey to continuously improve the way they work. And that is very important with these kinds of processes, because what people usually do is they write a big document and say, "Ha, yeah, we're ready now, we are ready for open source culture." But if nobody reads it and nobody acts on it, and it doesn't become integral part of the system of what you're actually doing as a company, it's going to fail. And mainly what we see in agencies and companies is that the developers, are thinking about open source because it saves them a lot of work, makes it easy, you can collaborate, you can go to conferences, have fun, and so on and so on. but management level sees that, and other parts of the organization are not so aware of sharing and caring and contributing and collaborating. So now we come to OSPO, this shortcoming for the open source project office, meaning that you have your whole project management, facilitation, everything up to the point that you have the OSFO, open source finance organization part of your organization that is all collaborating. So what is important in an open source project office? It's improving the efficiency and decreasing the cost, obviously, because you don't have to redo the same work. You determine what packages to leverage, what libraries to take. Within Drupal, if you do Symfony, blah, 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 you have a lot of Symfony libraries. There's a lot of front-end, Node, whatever stuff that you're using, a lot of dependencies. And you have to be really specific, okay, which are the ones that we're using, which are the ones that we're trusting. Okay, so what international projects you may want to publish? What of your internal projects you want to share and publish with? That's something to consider, because if you publish it on GitHub or another place of open source, you also need to take care of it and maintain it. And in general, what people do is they have a great idea, they build it, it works for them, boom, they put it on the GitHub, and then you see, this is not updated for 2.5 years, and the whole technology stack goes way up with new and more improved stuff. So then it becomes a burden for the company. And within that, you can determine what components will best accelerate your product growth, quality, and security. So all these things have implications on both your product viability and competitiveness, how your internal resources are being used, and what the risk profile your company is taking. Oh, that's one too many. It's not. Okay, so if you look at this OSPO, you can see it there in the bottom corner. There's only one thing that you need to remember from this, besides RocketChat.me, is the todogroup.org. And in there is extended tutorials written down in GitHub pages and so forth that all handle around how you manage your open source project office. And you see that a lot of big companies, big tech companies, like bazillion big tech companies, are participating as a member and actively contributing. And you also see that next slide, the large companies, almost all of them have this open source product office. And yeah, so Topware, like 10,000 plus employees, 77%, they have these policies and they're living by these policies. And the more industry-related, telecom, finance, yeah, they're all quite busy with that. But it didn't come down yet to our agencies. It didn't come yet to our startups or grow-ups. And not all of them are participating in that. So most of that is about contribution and the reasons why. So use of open source code for non-commercial or internal reasons, because that's also an option. If you have open source code, you can just, if the license allowed it, take it, update it, change it, sell it. Another reason to contribute with that is to use open source in commercial projects, like I just said. Contribute code upstream, a very important one, because you're related, you're reliant on the upstream code to be working. So if you're using a certain library, let's say in the front end, like a bootstrap, very practical, and there is something not really right there, you can submit a patch and update it. Another thing is on the culture side is it is much easier to recruit and hire open source developers, open source minded developers. You can even flip it around that if you don't do these kind of things, you don't get any people, except for people that want to burn their hours in order to get money at the end of the month, but are not really involved. To create your own open source, attend and speak at open source conferences, and to train developers to contribute to open source projects. Then there is consensus. Why? Majority is aiming to that fostering open source culture within the organization is one of the most important things. And for the rest, to maintain open source licenses, compliances, reviews, oversight. We got this whole train with the GDPR and its American equivalent, and by sharing that kind of things, you can save a lot of money and a lot of resources. Own oversee execution of open source strategy, communicate open source strategy with an outside company, facilitate effective use of open source in commercial products and services, develop, deliver, launch, blah, blah, blah. The whole train comes after that. So what are the benefits? People become more aware of open source use and commercial dependencies. There's an increased speed of agility, how fast you can build stuff, because you can take these libraries, and if you understand what's happening in there, you can actually make it really fast to a market-ready product. Better compliancy again, more influence in open source communities, which is like free marketing. That's also how I use that. If I speak at a conference, that's free marketing. You have lower licensing fee, increased participation, so other people start helping in your project and fix your bugs. It's even better. And then we have faster increased market adoption, more contributions to in-house open source projects from external third-party contributors, and lower support costs, since you can do QA and testing within the community. Just put it there and people start, hey, it's not working for me. Ah, okay, let's fix that. Either together or maybe somebody makes a pull request. And you have a bigger, like I said before, a bigger development recruitment, so people like that to collaborate and work together. So, frequency of activities, use the open source for non-commercial or internal reasons. That's usually why people think of open source. If it is a proprietary product, then companies don't really think, okay, let's make this open source, or parts of it open source. And I'll discuss about that a little bit later. Contribute code upstream, recruit, create, train, and attend open conferences. So this frequency diminishes the more it goes down. Anyway, there's challenges. So within this strategy, how do you start it? How do you plan it? How do you approach it? Setting up your open source policy within your company. Do you enforce that everything is open source, or is there some secrets that you keep around for your enterprise customers? And getting your executive, like stated in the start, executive and middle management and so forth, they don't really understand what this is and why would you get stuff for free and how can we sell it then, blah, blah, blah. You know the drill. That's the one that you usually have contact with. Finding legal stuff with open source experience, that's also something iffy. Setting the budget, how much can it cost to give away stuff for free? What? I pay to give stuff away for free? Yes, I do. Okay, but why? Marketing, engagement, and the whole riddle that we saw before. But people don't really realize that. And then you want to find an open source minded project manager, project owner. There are not so many available around. So it's up to open sourced education in order to make manuals and diaries and so forth for doing that. And that's exactly what the to-do group has been doing for the Linux Foundation. So that's why you need to remember todogroup.org. Easy peasy. Next. Okay. There's resources for license compliancy, what if you go into lawsuit, and so forth. And last but not least, getting engineering support and buy-in. Well, okay, metrics for success. There comes out a lot of good stuff. Open source within the culture. People are happy, like you are here on the DrupalCon. Developer velocity due to use of libraries and standard definitions of ways of doing things, getting the modules out of Drupal.org. You can go much faster. You can reach in to other open source communities. That's exactly what I love, to do cross open source collaboration. For example, to make we did it, it's already 4 years ago, time flies when you're having fun. We did a link between the Mautic open source marketing automation and Drupal. So if you have people on your Drupal side and they can go to become in a bucket of customers in the marketing automation and so forth. Very cool. You have fewer license violations. That brings a lot of money from your pocket into somebody else's pocket because they spend money on lawsuits. And it's something that I don't want to be involved in. You get a faster compliance process due to sharing, and the volume of the upstream code contribution helps again. And therefore the number of contributors and contributions increases, which makes your market adoption for your project easier, and so forth, that the number of open source projects are initiated. A lot of forks come out of that. And in Drupal we have the example of Backdrop. If you still want to have I have one left, Drupal 6 site that I host. And I'm still trying to get this client to port it to Backdrop because it's no longer supported, it doesn't work anymore. Anyway, developer hiring onboarding is consistent. If people are working on a specific framework like React, they get better and better in there. Thus, when you hire them, you have less onboarding time to get them rolling. So why do people don't want to have open source in their project office? Most of the reasons there is that they didn't consider, they didn't know. That's the whole reason why I'm talking here. They see burdens. Everything, when you come with a new plan, people see burdens. Yeah, but it takes a lot of money and there's constraints. Our organization is too small, we cannot do it ourselves. We don't see the business value because it doesn't give direct money. We have never heard of the open source programs. We don't want to regulate and standardize open source practices and let our developers run wild and make their own stuff, and maybe we sell it, maybe we don't, we'll see. And so forth. Organizations, open source use and participation is too small, there's not enough buy-in. Yeah. Want one, but I can't justify it. That's usually middle management, that they can't explain why you want to have it. And I don't use or participate open source. I just buy my stuff, and when it's broken, I buy a new one. Also pretty common. Used to have one, but ended it. That's a small 3%, and that's usually due to company organization, a new big boss, and so forth, and then they kill the project because that was from their previous predecessor. Anyway, going to issue triage, because I was so positive about making this whole open source project office with everything open source, including the finance and the management and so forth. Why wouldn't you want to do it, or why would you want to be hesitant in order to start giving away everything for free? And that's mainly the triage between the specific things that you sell to your enterprise customers, so the custom modules in the case of Drupal, or the custom themes, and the community added pull request or specifics that you can get. And what we see also within Rocket Chat is that there's a lot of really cool features that are developed within the community. They're ready as a pull request. However, if we want to merge it, it conflicts with a very big customer. And we want to keep one single open code base. So there we go for issue triage, and it takes forever. Same thing, it's not new to Drupal. We also have in Drupal, like, there's 12, 13,000 open issues in Drupal core. And some of them don't get merged ever due to these kinds of triage, because if you merge that, it will break another thing. And yeah, you have to be cautious about, okay, what are my specific features that I need for my enterprise products, and what do I allow, and how can I refactor the things to come back into a central open core. And that's, in my opinion, the best way to do it, and to keep, not to be mistaken, enterprise customers are part of the community because they pay for your peanut butter on your sandwich. So they're an essential part. And also a lot of technology is driven by, even here in DrupalCon, by big companies who are not agencies and who are actively participating, like Pfizer and so forth. So keep that in mind, that there is an equilibrium, a balance between open or not so open. Within Rocket Chat, we have a developer corporate community together, and it's built on TypeScript, React, so we interact with the TypeScript React community. MongoDB is obviously the database. And there is extensions upon Office's ERPs, platform integration. Mautic isn't there yet, but it's soon another project that I'm going to initiate with obviously the people from Mautic, because if you work together with different open sources, it gets better and better. And then if you take it on the left side, these are like the apps for integrations, and there is specific apps for bridging it to the metrics. And yeah, in the community version, you can do it for your DMs, and not yet for channels and multi-channels and all this other special stuff. That's enterprise. Okay, there's another app that you can install and pay for it per app. Fine. Same thing happens for single sign-on. You can do auth and all kinds of nice sign-ons, but the Active Directory, where the big corporations handle by that, you have to pay for. Okay. But if somebody in the community wants to build it for free, they can do so. Same thing for machine learning, artificial intelligence, and bots. Most of them are open because the corporates are slowly adapting that, but still, there is specific technology that that is not open, it is proprietary, but it's integrated due to market demand for enterprise. Thus, that app will become enterprise, easy peasy. Anyway, oh, that was fast, or did I? Oh, no, I did it right. All right, now let's look at scale. We're no longer on Moore's law. Who here knows what Moore's law is? Oh, yeah, one person. Moore's law is that the capacity of the computer will hockey stick increase over time. Due to chip manufacturers and size and technology, it's no longer the case, but it is the case within the infrastructure in the interweb, in the cloud. It's growing exponentially, and we're utilizing more and more and more and more and more. Just not only on Twitter by shouting out or on Facebook, but also on all your devices are connected. You have, on average, you have 3.4 devices with you here. And it's increasing because we're putting devices in our houses, we're putting devices in everywhere. Everything is going to be smart in the near future, let's say already now, but in the coming 3, 4, 5 years, even more and more and more. So this thing is going exponentially. So what we see with the rollout of 5G, I call this 5G superglue, going to 6G is you first have this fixed access where you have your broadband connection at home with fast internet, and then 1921, 5G get rolled out, so everybody can do everything everywhere, regardless if they have a backline or not. And that will go 21, 26 to very low latency IoT, which is really important because you need to have direct communications. If you have more than 300 milliseconds, depending on your application, it doesn't work in real time anymore. We don't perceive that, but within the systems, it is essential. And from there, it will get massive rollout, so we get more and more and more and more and more and more bandwidth. So, like I said, Internet of Things, Internet of Everything, they will be added to the mix. And that leads to a new need. You go from the cloud that you know, where your Google email is. In your home, you have something faster, or maybe you have some NAS or something. You can say that's edge computer. It's on the edge of your network. And in the middle there, the next thing is that there comes like fog computing. It's between the cloud and your house. It's fog. So how this works, you have this smart stuff. Can be a computer, can be anything. And then you have fog nodes, which are in your premises or just nearby, local data centers, just to reduce that latency. And from there, the data is transferred to the cloud. It can be your private cloud, it can be public cloud like Google, Microsoft, Amazon, and so forth. Should always name 3, else it's commercial plugging. So with that, the next thing that I want to try is to make it another step on top of that. So besides the Internet of Things, I want to continue and start bootstrapping because there's not so much around yet in making an open farm. Thus, the whole extending of the IT to the farm. So we bought a farm in the south of the Netherlands. It's about 1 hectare, 10,000 square meters of land, and it currently is no longer this much rubbish as when we bought it. So everything is vacated, and all the people's stuff is there out, and I'm getting away all these things that this asbestos can be removed. There's 1,200 square meters of that stuff. And yeah, for the rest we have about 1,700 indoor space, so I'm going to do indoor farming. And it has glass fiber internet, which is great for digital nomads like me. So what I'm going to do is automation upon aquaponics and mushrooms. So you have these big chunks of wood, and in there they come out after a while. And there's fishes, and the fish, they poop, and the poop goes by the bacteria, leading to nitrate and nitrate, and that goes automatically with little sensors and Arduinos through the plants. So a lot of devices come into my farm. And that's the nitrogen cycle. I just explained that. So from ammonia, the thing that we're all complaining about in the Western world, the stick stuff in Dutch, nitrate, that gets reduced and be used for the plants. Now, with the mushrooms, there's an issue that there's a little bit of extended CO2, and CO2 is easily eaten by algae. And algae produce oxygen out of there, and thus leave us with a residue. And residue you can do for your skincare, or you can make biodiesel out of that. Right, so to round it up, from going open source, extending that openness to project management, to finance, adding extra loads of devices, going from the IT to an open farm. Coming back to contributions, you know that there's contribution day tomorrow, so I will invite you to attend. And in 9 o'clock in C2 there is the first time contribution workshop. If you're not familiar with how this works, that is perfectly arranged. You get a mentor issues and you flow by through the queue, and at the end of the day maybe you fix it, or maybe it's like a pull request for core, you know. You don't know, it happens. And what else we have? Oh yeah, of course. DrupalCon is over, well, tomorrow at the end of the day, and what will happen in Europe, there is not so really much. There's a good, nice one day in Lisbon. DrupalCamp Baltics is coming up, so if you are interested, as far as I know, they were still looking for speakers in Estonia, 14 October. And DrupalCamp Oslo 22 is 4 and 5 November. And also encourage you and your local organizations to organize more and more Drupal camps, since after COVID, it's a little bit slow with new camps and opportunities. So this was my talk. If you want to find me, I'm in Drupal Chat Me, I'm in Slack as well, like all 25 of them for Drupal. 040 Lab on the Twitter and LinkedIn. Oh yeah, we have way too many Slacks. Okay. Yep, that's it. Is there any questions? I think we have about, oh perfect, 6 minutes for questions. Yes. Yes, sure. I can also repeat it, but let's take this first.
Okay. Thanks for a very bright presentation. And could you please tell a little bit about Open Farm?
Oh yes, Open Farm. Yeah, we have there's a Drupal distribution in Drupal 7 even. It's called Farm OS, and it's a little bit old-fashioned, but it is being used a lot in farm culture. And with Open Farm, from my side, from a technical point of view, you're requesting, or socialist, technical point of view, it's mainly about sensors and actors. So what I have is Raspberry Pis, Arduinos, a mesh network with Wi-Fi. With that, I can add those sensors and actors and automate everything but harvesting and planting. Yeah, like a smart house, but then indeed outdoor, inside the shed. So there will be LED bulbs, and with the LED bulbs, the plants will grow, and obviously those are also automated. So my intent is to get like 3, 4 people from the neighborhood who deliver the goods and help with the harvest and planting, so I can also take my vacation. Because that's the main downside of a farmer. You can never have vacation. Does it answer your question? Cool. Any other questions? No? Yes? No? Okay. Then I invite you here to get your stickers and your t-shirt. I got one XXL and the rest M.